Who's that? Okay. Okay. Cycling and how to implement it into your training week so that you can get the benefits of cycling, the aerobic benefits, what are the other benefits. By the end of this video, you should know how to implement cycling, why it's such a good cross-training method for running, especially distance running, and how you can put it into your week so that it's not impacting your running, it's not kind of having a negative effect on your running. And also, I'll talk about some of the myths about cycling and that runners often talk about when they talk about cycling and how I can debunk those as well. So, cycling. I went to a race, a 50K uphill race in Granada called Subida a Pico Veleta. Starts from Granada city centre, finishes on the top of Veleta mountain. 3,400 meters, 3,398 meters. I fell in love. That was my literally 7-8 months. August is the month of 8. I fell in love with Granada. I fell in love with the heat. I fell in love with the mountains. I fell in love with everything I can possibly imagine, and that was 2010. And when I finished that, I was just, I'm going to be a professional distance runner. I need to find a way how I can make myself a professional distance runner, have this as a full-time gig, because in order to compete with those guys that I can see on the podium, I've got to be all in. And that's essentially, that's why this channel is called All In, because you have to be all in order to get anywhere where you really kind of in the top 1% of anything. What I realized from that is, okay, I need more information. I need to be taught. A lot of those winners were either Italians or Spanish, and they were really small guys, really light guys. I've been on the start line with guys who weigh 45 kilograms, but a lot of these Spanish guys are between 50 and 55 kilograms, which is incredibly light. And so naturally, we see it in the Tour de France and the Vuelta a España and the Giro d'Italia. These guys are perfect climbers because the power to weight, they don't need so much power to catapult themselves up a hill because they weigh so little. And so me coming in as somebody that was much bigger at the time, sort of 83 kilograms, and I got that down to probably about 75, that's like almost half more than what they are. So how can I compete? So I told my friends immediately after the race that I was going to win this race at some point. And so I went home and I was messaging all the people that had previously won the race. And I came across a guy, very famous guy called Eric Seedhouse. He works as an astronaut now. I think he's written 20 books on space travel. He's been world champion of multiple Ironmans, world champion in Ironman at certain age groups. He is a monster and ferocious in sport. And I reached out to, I think I sent something like 15, 20 messages to different people. He was the only person who responded. So I'll always be grateful for him. And reaching out to people like that, and if they do respond and give you the time of day, and you have that level of curiosity, which is absolutely paramount to do well in anything. But even distance running, when you can find everything on the internet, which is the problem, you can find everything on the internet, which means all the right answers and all the wrong answers, and it's what to choose from. Eric told me that he asked me about my training, and then said he won Veleta 1 or 2 times, I think. But he won Veleta because he was a triathlete. And so he was spending so much time on the bike. So he had the aerobic capacity from the swimming and the cycling on top of the running. But more important than that, as a cyclist, you're using exactly the same muscles, glutes to hamstrings, and the way that the quads are moving, you're using exactly the same muscles to go uphill as a runner. And so he said, you've got to be on the bike for at least 100 miles a week. So I started implementing 160 kilometers, 100 miles a week on the bike. And that would be split up with 4 40 kilometer rides. And so what I would do is my typical week would be Wednesday interval session, Sunday long run. Pretty quickly that would happen, that I would realize that I was trying to do a session every 3 days, so 9-day cycles, and then tried to do a session every 3 days. Then I tried to do a session every 4 days and realized I was probably giving it too much to from the long run to the interval session. The week is perfect. You need 3 days after the long run to do an interval session and 4 days after the interval session ready to do the long run again. It's very simple like that. With cycling, you got a few things. It's accelerating the recovery. So accelerating the recovery from the big sessions, the interval session and the long run. So on the day after the interval session, I would just ride the bike. I would get up and ride the bike first thing in the morning. Usually there was a level of soreness in my calves, in my hamstring, and in my glutes. And the purpose of me going out there, high cadence on the bike, which is incredibly important. You don't want to be using power and building leg muscle, but you're working still on the right muscles. You're pushing, and it's all about pushing, which is kind of, if you think about it, is when you're moving uphill, you're pushing the glute and the hamstring down. It's about pushing on the bike, high cadence, so putting it as much as possible on the heart and lungs, building the aerobic base, but at the same time, building the muscles that are important for going uphill. That was incredibly important for me, and made me not only get better at that race, but also win it and set the course record, but become a good ultra runner and become a good marathon runner. Because instead of having, let's say, 6-7 hours a week running, I would have on top of that 100 miles or 160 kilometers in cycling. So that aerobic base was much bigger. And then you start to kind of, like, the gym also hits the right type of muscles. So you become strong in that area, and then the results are exponential. So I put it on the day after the interval, and then that was my only rest day on the Thursday. Then on the Friday, I would also have the run first, a recovery run first, and then get on the bike either immediately or after a siesta and 6 hours rest and get on the bike. And then I would do exactly the same after the long run. Monday after the long run, I'd do a recovery run and then get on the bike for 40 kilometers. And then I would do exactly the same with the day before an interval session, but be careful not to push it. So I wasn't pushing it. It was just all about being out there, and I love to be out there, mainly in Granada. So you're in the most beautiful place. So literally, I fell in love with the city that much that within 2 years I'd moved there. Because for me, it was like, okay, how do I become a professional runner? And where is the best place in the world that I can be in order to try to win big races? That's what I was all about. And so within 2012, that's where I moved to. And so you're in beautiful surroundings, but if you're on the turbo trainer, if you're on a Wahoo Kicker or whatever it might be for you, then it's equally as beneficial. If you can just get on there for 40 minutes or 60 minutes and then get yourself up to, ideally that kind of volume where you're doing it. What you want with cycling is it's a little bit more preparation, because it's not you just putting your running shoes on and getting out the door. You've got to think about the bike, you've got to think, what's the weather doing? What do I need to wear? How many layers do I need to wear? You've got to think about your nutrition, because usually they're going longer. A lot of my cycling would be really super easy, and it would be in a hot country. So I wouldn't need to think about, I didn't even wear a shirt most of the time. And so I just literally take $5. So if I had a puncture, I could get home. If I needed more calories, I could do it. A lot of it was fasted. So again, I was tapping, I was improving my metabolism. I was improving my fat burning mechanism. And it was just super easy, but it was all on the heart and lungs. So when it came to climbing, when it came to implementing specific training plans towards that 50K uphill or other similar races that were a lot uphill, I was just in control of the race. It just felt so much easier to go uphill. And if you've got local races, whether it's up and down, undulating, whatever, or long parts of uphill, you'll find that if you have some cycling, that you would be the person who's not dying up that hill. You're actually accelerating up that hill. And that's where you want to be. I got to the point where it's very, very comfortable for me to run 4 minutes per kilometer pace on a gradient of 5-6%, which made it perfect for the 50K uphill. And the more I got used to that, and naturally your heart rate elevates a lot more than the flat, but the more I got used to that, the easier it was to win that race and then go on to set the course record. I think I mentioned that twice now, but I want you to know that I set the course record on my favorite race of all time. If you get anything from this, or if you've got anything more, if you have any more questions about cycling, how to implement it, if I've not explained it well enough, let me know in the comments below. And as always, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.